Language is never just a set of words. It is a carrier of memory, identity, and belonging. For Ukrainians, language has often been both a home and a battlefield. The survival of Ukrainian across centuries is not the story of quiet evolution, but of endurance under pressure, of resilience against deliberate attempts to erase it. From the 17th century onward, the Ukrainian language became the object of systematic suppression. Official documents, laws, decrees, circulars, and secret orders sought to limit its use, confine it to folklore, or deny its very existence. These documents are not myths. They are preserved in archives, signed by kings, tsars, and commissars. The story of the prohibitions is a story of power. To forbid a language is to attempt to control thought, memory, and loyalty. And yet, despite bans from Warsaw, St. Petersburg, and Moscow, Ukrainian survived. Chapter 1. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the first blow. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was one of the largest and most diverse states of early modern Europe. It included Poles, Lithuanians, Belarusians, Jews, Armenians, Tatars, and Ukrainians. Its political system, the famous Golden Liberty, was unique, but it was also hierarchical. Polish culture gradually became dominant, particularly in the Eastern territories. For much of the 16th and 17th centuries, the Ruthenian language, the ancestor of modern Ukrainian and Belarusian, was used in chancelleries and courts. Kiev and Vilnius chancelleries wrote in it. But by the late 17th century, Polish elites sought to consolidate power through linguistic assimilation. In 1696, the Sejm passed a law requiring that all court proceedings in the Kiev voivodeship be conducted in Polish, not Ruthenian. This was the first official prohibition against Ukrainian in the legal and administrative sphere. This was not merely administrative. It created a linguistic hierarchy. Polish was the language of law, status, and mobility. Ukrainian was pushed downward, associated with peasants and folklore. The symbolic power of the 1696 decree cannot be overstated. It marked the moment when the Ukrainian language was officially excluded from public life. Chapter 2. The Tsardom of Russia, Peter I, and the printing press. If the Polish ban marked the first exclusion, Russian decrees would institutionalize suppression. In the 17th century, the Kiev-Pechersk Lavra was a vibrant center of book printing. Sermons, primers, and even philosophical works circulated widely in Ukrainian. But this autonomy worried Moscow. In 1720, Tsar Peter I issued a decree forbidding the printing of any books in Ukrainian. Only church books were allowed, and they had to be edited to conform to Russian orthography. This decree was crucial. It transformed Ukrainian printing presses into imaged linguistic conformity. Peter's vision of empire was built on uniformity. To him, Ukrainian difference was a potential threat. By eliminating Ukrainian from print culture, he aimed to integrate the region more tightly into his empire. Chapter 3. The Church and the Schools, 1769 and 1775. By the 18th century, language suppression had reached children. In 1769, the Synod of the Russian Orthodox Church banned the printing and use of Ukrainian primers. This meant Ukrainian children could no longer learn to read in their own tongue. Then, in 1775, following the destruction of the Zaporizhian Sich, Empress Catherine II ordered the closure of Ukrainian parish schools on the left bank. Education was to be conducted in Russian. The dual bans, on primers and on parish schools, targeted the roots of Ukrainian literacy. They sought to ensure that the next generation of Ukrainians would grow up speaking Russian in school, leaving Ukrainian as a private, folkloric tongue. Chapter 4. The 19th Century. Erasure by Law. The 19th century was the age of nationalism in Europe. Across the continent, people sought to rediscover their languages and histories. For Ukrainians, this was the age of Taras Shevchenko, Panteleimon Kulish, and the Cyril and Methodius Brotherhood. But the Russian Empire responded with repression. In 1804, the state issued an educational reform forbidding teaching in Ukrainian. schools became instruments of Russification. The attack deepened in 1863 with the Valiev Circular. Issued by Interior Minister Pyotr Valiev, it explicitly stated, "There never was, is not, and never can be any separate Little Russian language." This was more than censorship. It was ontological denial. Ukrainian was not just banned, it was declared non-existent. Then came 1876, the infamous M's Ukaz, signed by Tsar Alexander II. It prohibited printing any Ukrainian language books, importing Ukrainian publications from abroad, staging Ukrainian plays, teaching in Ukrainian. The consequences were devastating. Ukrainian theater went underground. Writers like Ivan Franko had to publish in Galicia, under Austrian rule. Ukrainian culture survived largely outside the empire's borders. Chapter 5. The Early 20th Century. Revolution and Hope. The collapse of the Russian Empire in 1917 opened a window of opportunity. The Ukrainian People's Republic declared Ukrainian the official language. Newspapers flourished. Schools switched to Ukrainian instruction. Theaters staged Ukrainian plays openly. This was the first real flowering of Ukrainian as a state language. Yet the window was short. By 1920, Soviet power had established itself in most of Ukraine. At first, the Soviets pursued a policy of Ukrainization. In the 1920s, Ukrainian was encouraged in schools, administration, and publishing. This policy produced a cultural renaissance. Writers like Mykola Krylova, Leskurba, and others flourished. But this renaissance was fragile. By the early 1930s, Stalin reversed Ukrainization. Chapter 6. Stalinism and the Executed Renaissance. The early 1930s brought famine, repression, and linguistic Russification. In 1933, Commissar Pavel Postyshev issued orders to cleanse Ukrainian of nationalist deviations. Dictionaries were rewritten, grammar altered, words purged. Ukrainian was forcibly drawn closer to Russian. At the same time, the NKVD carried out mass arrests of Ukrainian intellectuals. This generation became known as the Executed Renaissance. Writers, poets, linguists, and theater directors were shot or sent to labor camps. The policy was not only about language, it was about breaking the cultural backbone of a nation. By the late 1930s, the Ukrainian language had been domesticated into a safe folklore role. Russian dominated science, industry, and higher education. Chapter 7. The Late Soviet Period. Quiet Suppression. After World War II, the Soviet Union maintained a facade of bilingualism. Officially, Ukrainian was a state language of the Ukrainian SSR. In practice, Russian was the language of prestige. Schools increasingly switched to Russian. University instruction was overwhelmingly Russian. Career advancement in science, the military, or the party required Russian fluency. In the 1970s, dissident movements tried to defend Ukrainian. Writers like Vasil Stus and Ivan Juba resisted through literature and essays. But they faced surveillance, censorship, and imprisonment. The late Soviet policy was not open prohibition, but systemic marginalization. Ukrainian was tolerated in folklore, song, and local culture, but Russian was hegemonic. Chapter 8. The Legacy of Prohibition. The prohibitions, from the Sejm's 1696 decree to the M's Ukaz, from Stalin's campaigns to Brezhnev's quiet Russification, shared one goal: to weaken Ukrainian identity by eroding its language. And yet the story is not only one of loss, it is also one of resilience. Ukrainian survived in songs, in the works of exiled writers, in underground schools, and in the stubborn loyalty of ordinary families who passed it down. Today, as Ukraine asserts its independence and faces new challenges, the survival of the language stands as a symbol of endurance. No decree, however powerful, could erase it. Conclusion: history shows us that language is power. To ban a language is to attempt to ban a people's memory. But the Ukrainian story also shows us that repression often has the opposite effect. It strengthens identity by forcing people to defend it consciously. The official documents that once sought to silence Ukrainian The Sejm Decree of 1696, Peter's Edict of 1720, the Valuev Circular, the Ems Ukaz, the Stalinist purges, now testify not to success but to failure. They show how much effort was invested to destroy Ukrainian, and how little it succeeded. The Ukrainian language survived empires, and it continues to grow today, not because it was allowed, but because it was resisted, cherished, and defended.